Imagine your son was standing up to a bully, and the school decides tells you you need to punish your child, and parent and you as a parent say, "No, I'm not punishing my child." It's exactly what happened. Because we all tell our kids to stand up for themselves, stand up to bullies. And that's exactly what's going to happen in this story from Newsweek, which was almost 2 weeks ago. So once this ad ends, you're going to listen to this article and you're going to hear the sides of the story from Newsweek. So let's take a look.
Voice of a winner. Mom refusing to punish son for standing up to school bully applauded. Mom refusing to punish her son for injuring his school bully is being backed online. In a post to Mumsnitz, am I being unreasonable? AIBU forum on November 30th, user Spriya Ahmed said that another child had been making her son's life hell for a while, but the school had not stepped in to protect him. After the bully pushed him over, the poster's son retaliated, flooring the bully and giving him a bloody nose. The school rang Spriya Ahmed to inform her of the incident, but the mom told them that she won't punish her son for standing up for himself. Although some users felt the mom is encouraging her son to be violent, most applauded Spriya Ahmed for supporting her son. The long-term effects of school bullying. According to the latest figures from the National Center for Educational Statistics, 1 in 5 students experience bullying at school. While male students are more likely to be physically bullied, 6% of boys compared to 4% of girls, female students are more likely to become the focus of gossip and rumors, 18 versus 9%, or to be purposefully excluded from activities, 7% versus 4%. Parenting consultant Roma Norris said that school bullying can affect a child's academic performance. Bullying can erode their self-esteem and create difficulties in their ability to form friendships, she told Newsweek. Because children's ability to access their intelligence is very much linked to how safe and welcome they feel in the school environment, bullying often creates learning issues such as impaired academic performance or school refusal altogether. Bullying during childhood can have a lifelong impact on victims, according to Norris. Adults who I've worked with that have a history of bullying are often still impacted by their early experiences. Bullying is the kind of thing that can be underneath an adult's difficulties in the workplace, such as imposter syndrome or inability to get on with peers, for example, she said. It can also show up in intimate relationships as not being able to trust, or a sense of neediness that displays either as clinginess or a tendency to push loved ones away based on not feeling lovable. Norris said that therapy can be beneficial for both children and adults who have suffered through bullying, so the painful experiences no longer impact their life. I'd also be very proud of him. In her post, Priya Ahmed said the bully had been picking on her son, as well as a few other children, for a while. As a result, her son, who is in the 5th grade, has stopped wanting to go to school. Fed up with the bullying harassing him, Priya Ahmed's son retaliated. Well, today, he snapped and floored this boy after he came and pushed son over. He's always pushing him, she wrote. This boy's nose was bleeding. The head teacher called Spriya Ahmed, but she informed him that she won't be punishing her son for defending himself. I'm proud of him for standing up for himself and showing this boy he won't be bullied anymore, as clearly the school weren't doing anything to protect my son, she said. In the poll attached to her post, 87% of users believed that Spriya Ahmed was right to be proud of her child. Well done to your son. I'm sure he won't be bullied anymore, commented temporary name 158. I'd also be very proud of him, said Bossy Bloss. Schools seem to do absolutely nothing about bullying, which goes on over years, and are then surprised when the person snaps, wrote Gertrude Perkins. Papery thing. Funin the Sun 19 added, I hope they haven't been overlooking the bully's behavior all this time and now see the bully as a big poor victim and your son, the bad guy. However, Moles on Polls said, I'd be ashamed if my son used violence. Ticket to Paradise agreed, writing, it's a shame you haven't taught your child how to be confident and stand up for themselves without resorting to violence. Once Mummy 84 commented, it's a shame that your son has been put in the position where he feels that this is the only thing left that he can do. I would probably say to my son that violence is still wrong in any situation, but highlight that he had been failed by it not being stopped before it got to this point. Spriya Ahmed's story isn't the first to spark debate online. A woman shared her proud auntie moment with Twitter after her nephew used an arm lock she taught him to defend himself against a boy who punched him. A mom was recently backed by Redditors for not inviting her daughter's bully to her birthday party, despite inviting the rest of the class, while a mom refusing to pay for her son's homophobic bully to attend summer camp was praised by users on the IDA forum. Newsweek was not able to verify the details of the case.
It's an issue still going on. So like I said throughout the 6 years, if you want to tell your child to stand up to a bully, then that's the choice. But if you feel like, oh, I'm not punishing my child for standing up for himself, then that's the choice. It's like I said before, when you choose the behavior, you choose the consequences. That's an old saying. I've still lived by that to this day. To this day. But we don't need people being picked on. If I were to live in a world where people are not being bullied, that's the kind of world I want to live in, where kids are not being bullied every day. Every day. If you feel like you're being bullied, talk to a teacher, talk to an adult. They will take care of it. They have the resources, and they'll help you. If you got to resort to homeschool, then okay, that's one story to look at. Where I'm going to show you tell you a story about when bullying caused people to go to homeschool, and share with you some ways to prevent it. Next, she was young and beautiful. She had found the one she loved. But her parents disapproved of it. Now the question is, did the parents do it? They deny it. That's what the police overseas say. Now everyone is telling their side of the story. Bob McEwen with Forbidden Love. Stay with us. It seemed like a story that should have been lived happy ever after, like a fairy tale. Girl meets boy, they fall in love, and get married. But what seemed so natural, instead ignited a battle between two families, two cultures, and long was made she's in two nations thousands of miles apart. All because two young people defied tradition and fell in love. You're going to meet this lover. You're also going to meet her teacher and Jess and the friends. And the question, is someone getting away with murder? That's the question we'll answer. Here's Bob McEwen.
She said she'd seen him in the crowd and their eyes met and she fell in love and was love at first sight.
That first glance was all it took. They were still just teenagers when they both gazed across that crowded room and came to the realization that they were made for one another.
She just was drawn to him and wanted to be with him, but said that her family wouldn't approve of it.
What began so innocently became a battle of wills, pitting one generation against another, modern values against a centuries-old culture. 5 years later, it would be headline news on two continents and lead to one overriding question: is someone getting away with murder?
She was very sweet. Her eyes, sparkle when she talked to you and almost like teary,
She was a beautiful girl, just lovely. There was no negativity around her. She was like a little angel.
Her friends knew her as Jassy, a nickname reflecting her Indian heritage. Though she'd been born and raised in Canada, Jassy's family clung passionately to many of the customs and traditions of the Sikh religion practiced in their homeland. In many ways, Jassy grew up to be as naive as she was beautiful.
Maybe it was her innocence, maybe it was her romance. There was something about her that was wonderful. She was a vision. You would see her and she would take your breath away.
Jassy was brought up here in this thriving Sikh community just outside Vancouver on Canada's Pacific coast. More Sikhs live here than anywhere else but India. And like so many other families, Jassy's arrived with dreams of farming, making a comfortable living as owners of a large blueberry farm. According to Jassy's former teacher, Deb DeVos, Jassie's uncle, Surjit Badesha, was the family patriarch who ensured her upbringing was a strict one.
She did tell us that everybody was required to work, whether it be on the blueberry farm or outside of the farm. That the uncle controlled the money, that if you got a paycheck, it went to the uncle.
Though she was in her mid-20s, like many other single Sikh women, Jassie still lived at home. In her case, at this sprawling family compound. Her mother, father, siblings, aunts, uncles, different generations, everyone lived here together. And in this traditional Sikh family, it was expected that Jassie would continue to live here until the day she got married.
I think it's a bigger difference for women, for girls, because we are not allowed to date as much.
34-year-old Vijay Sangara was also raised in Vancouver. The older of two daughters, Vijay and her sister still sing many of the Sikh hymns they learned when they were young. Though Vijay and Jassie never met, they shared the challenge of growing up in the West, but living in a home tightly bound by the age-old traditions of the East.
There are more restriction on girls to be a good, quote-unquote, good Indian girl. If I wanted to stay out late, you have a curfew. Good girls don't stay up past this time.
Did you put up an argument? Did you say, well, the other kids are doing it?
You start asking questions, and many times they don't have the answers. They'll just say, this is what happens. This is tradition.
And in Sikh tradition, daughters are family treasures, prized and protected, and expected to remain pure in both deed and thought. In Jassie's home, the facts of life were never even discussed.
Well, we had to tell her about, the facts of life and the birds and the bees and what happens. Violet's straight.
Deb DeVos met Jassie when she was 19 and a new student at the beauty school DeVos owns.
That's her one day in class. I took pictures of her because I just thought she was so beautiful.
She was discovering the world outside the Sikh community with new friends, a career beyond the boundaries of the family farm, and an education that encompassed more than styling hair and applying makeup. And literally you had to explain biology to her.
Pretty much. Yeah, she didn't understand what happened between a man and a woman. So my students were very willing to tell her.
Just as Jassie was building that new life of her own with friends outside the Sikh community and the prospect of a career, her family was making plans for her to follow one of the most time-honored traditions in the Sikh culture. They'd decided that Jassie should marry, and they also would choose her groom. Both Jassie and Vijay grew up expecting they would have arranged marriages in which their families would play the role of matchmaker.
In our families, it's the parents who are the chiefs. And what they say, you listen to. And if you don't, then you're disobeying them.
So her mother and her uncle Surjit began the search for a suitable husband. Jassie shared her misgivings about that with her friends.
I think it was probably hard for her being Canadian, being in public schools and things, seeing a lot of girls falling in love and having boyfriends and, being with someone for love versus being with someone because your family thinks this is the person you should be with.
But as close as Jassie was to her family, living all together in their compound in Canada, she kept a secret from them, one she revealed only to those she trusted most. Jassie had already met someone, that young man with whom she'd fallen in love at first sight, and she wanted to marry him, no matter what her family thought.
She was overjoyed in love with him. It was just beautiful. We all thought we're never going to settle down or be with anybody until we have love like those two did, because it was amazing.
Now, did she also tell you that she knew right away he was not Mr. Right as far as her family would be concerned?
Well, that was obvious. Jassie knew that.
Okay. So, Jassie had a plan to move to Canada and arrange marriages and to still marry. But that secret would still be kept. So, when we return, the family had arranged for Jassie to move to a different country and come up with a secret plan to be with the man she loves. But would that secret be kept, or would someone do a contract? Bob McEwen continues. Stay with us. You've heard some of what Jassie's friends had to say and her teacher had to say about what Jassie was doing during her life. But the secret was about to begin. Could the marriage happen? You're about to meet that lover of Jassie's as he tells his side of the story and learn more about the Sikh tradition. Once again, here's Bob McEwen.
Life is not easy in northern India. Sukhwinder Singh, known by his nickname Mittu, has spent all of his 27 years here. And it was here that he first met Jassie. She was on a trip with her family when their eyes met at that wedding.
I liked her very much, and I was certain right then that I wouldn't be able to live without her.
For Mittu, the dream of marriage to a woman like Jassie and a life together in North America would be like winning the lottery. In their hearts, it may have been a match made in heaven, but in the minds of Jassie's family, it was a union that defied everything they believed in.
I had no idea that her family would be so opposed to our being together. I had absolutely no idea that all this would happen to us.
But in a traditional Sikh family, that opposition was completely understandable. Jassie was well educated from an affluent home in Canada. Mittu made a meager living as a rickshaw driver in India.
They would look upon it as, why would you want to do that? Here, we've given you all this, and you're going out and picking a commoner. How could you do that?
In fact, had Vijay chosen someone like Mittu, she might well have found herself facing the same kind of resistance.
He was really Mr. Wrong in a number of ways, wasn't he? He was below her economically. He was not someone her mother and uncle had even met, let alone approved of.
If he had a good job, the parents would look at it and say, okay, she's in love with somebody who in the future will give something to my daughter. He didn't have much to offer.
When Jassie returned to Canada after they first met, letters from Mittu followed, not to her home, but to Deb DeVos's beauty school.
She made it clear that she couldn't keep these letters at home?
No, she couldn't, because they would find out the relationship between her and this young man, and the consequences would be too great.
That relationship, like those letters, would continue for the next few years, until Mittu and Jassie were in their mid-20s. Despite the 7,000 miles between them, though they came from two separate worlds, those differences only seemed to draw them closer together. They began to make plans to marry, though Jassie surely knew it was not the arranged marriage her family had in mind.
They had arranged for her to marry someone that was quite a bit older than herself.
So this had already happened. The arranged marriage was underway at this point.
They had brought her several different prospects. I guess the uncle was getting quite impatient because, of course, she was saying no to all of them. And then finally he made an arrangement for this man that was in his 60s that was going to marry Jassie. And Jassie was adamant that she wouldn't marry him.
Torn between the pressure from her family to marry and the desire to lead a life of her own, Jassie came up with a plan. She convinced her mother to bring her to India. In fact, to the state called the Punjab, where her mom had grown up. She explained it might help her in choosing a husband. But there's something else she didn't tell her mother.
So was that just a scheme on her part?
On her part to get there, I think.
Delay the arranged marriage here and to get back to India to see him?
To see him, to be with him, and then I guess to decide to be married.
And that's when they were actually married in secret?
Right.
In March 2000, Jassie and Mittu managed to slip away and secretly marry in a local Sikh temple. The only witnesses were two friends. Their honeymoon, a few days together in the Punjabi countryside before she returned to Canada. For the time being, at least, the clandestine marriage had to remain a secret. And with good reason. She was now on a collision course with hundreds of years of tradition. Modern versus ancient, young versus old, east versus west. In a community where tradition is so important, her family was more conservative than most. By marrying Mittu, she had dishonored them.
The women are the honor, because she's the one who goes to the other family, and she takes the name of her parents So you're always carrying somebody's honor.
And 34-year-old Vijay should know. When she was Jassie's age, she married the man her parents chose for her. They divorced 2 years later.
What would have happened in the family if you had met and fallen in love with somebody your parents didn't approve of for whatever reason?
Oh, they'd be very angry. They'd be very angry because I would be dishonoring them. What they worry about is what people are going to say about you. And they're going to say, well, she wasn't under her parents' control. And that puts dishonor on the parents' role.
Back in Canada, Jassie told her friends that's exactly why she had to keep her family from finding out about her marriage to Mittu.
They wrote letters to each other and secret phone calls and things, and nobody was allowed to know her family. Couldn't find out because she knew it was wrong. She knew it was very wrong.
But her letters to Mittu revealed that the girl who'd never had a date, let alone a boyfriend, wasn't about to give up the first man she'd ever loved.
I can't wait till we're together. I miss you very much. I keep on thinking about the days I spent with you. I cannot take you out of my mind for even a second.
Jassie began making arrangements for Mittu to join her in Canada. She was also sending him money. That is until relatives back in India discovered their secret and told Jassie's family. When word reached the compound that Jassie had been married, her family was furious. Their response was sudden and severe. They put her under house arrest, unable to see or even talk to her friends, effectively cut off from the rest of the world, while her mother and uncle decided what they'd do next. For Jassie, life inside the family compound went from bad to worse.
I remember one point she described it. Her whole family was in the living room, and they were all yelling at her, pointing their finger at her, and she's sitting in front of all these people, and they're yelling and screaming at her, telling her why she shouldn't do this, and she's ruining her life.
And what did they want her to do?
They offered her money. They just said divorce him, leave him, just forget about him.
But Jassie refused to give in. Though she knew how strongly her family felt, somehow she convinced herself her marriage to Mittu could still have a happy ending, if only she could find a way to get him to Canada.
I said that they could stay at my place until they could get a little apartment somewhere, and Jassie was going to come back to work, and then Mittu was going to go to school and learn English.
Yeah, they were going to live
They
happily
were
ever
going to
after.
just live happily ever after, and they would be in Canada, and everything would be fine. And yes, Jassie knew that her family would disown her, but in time they would come to see the light and eventually accept the two of them.
So could love really conquer all? It might have seemed like a naive notion at the time, but in fact, Jassie's uncle did seem to undergo a dramatic change of heart. According to her friends, he indicated to Jassie that he intended to help Mittu emigrate to Canada. He had her sign these papers, a notarized statement written in Punjabi, a language she couldn't read or write. And with this document in hand, her uncle Surjit left for India, promising, friends say, everything would be fine.
They were almost there. They were so close.
When we come back, betrayals and threats. But would their threats actually lead to murder? Bob McEwen with some really disturbing accusations. Stay with us. So Jassie betrayed her family. The parents gave her money to divorce his ass. But now threats and betrayals are coming. But could threats lead to murder? As Bob McEwen continues, you're going to hear the side of the story from the lover.
Once in India, it became clear that though Jassie's uncle Surjit had led her to believe he would help reunite her with her husband, he really hadn't had a change of heart at all. Indian relatives loyal to Surjit went looking for Mittu.
These people came to my house when I was gone and threatened my mother and my brother and asked them to get me to agree to divorce Jassie. Otherwise, they would kill my whole family.
When that didn't work, Surjit took matters into his own hands. Apparently furious that Mittu had ignored his threats, Jassie's uncle decided to do something about it. He came to court here in the Punjab, and he charged Mittu with kidnapping Jassie and forcing her to marry him. And remember that notarized statement that the uncle had Jassie sign, the one in Punjabi that she couldn't read? Well, that's what he gave to the court as proof. It says in part that Jassy didn't love Mitu, that the wedding took place at gunpoint, and that she wants the marriage dissolved. That's all the local police needed to issue a warrant for Mitu's arrest. Now, he was not only an unwanted son-in-law, he was also a wanted man.
I went into hiding, and in my absence, they picked up my two friends, who were witnesses to my marriage with Jussie. And these boys were tortured.
Back in Canada, according to her friends, Jassy was still being closely watched. When she was able to make contact with Mitu, she learned that despite her uncle's promises, he had really gone to India to intimidate Mitu and his family into ending the marriage.
They took his mother into the prison and beat his mother.
Mitu was freaking out on the other end. I mean, he was like, get over here. My family, my friends are being threatened. I'm being threatened. You got to get over here.
Now, frantic to get to India to fight the false charges against her husband, she first had to escape from the family compound.
All she could think about was leaving. She just had to get there. That was the only thing that was on that girl's mind, was getting out of here.
After 5 years of secrets and lies, she was about to take the final step to leave her family behind and join her husband. Still held against her will, Jassy managed to make a call to the local police.
She was just grabbing things and just shoving anything she could see into the bay.
The police arrived. She grabbed her stuff and went with them.
Yeah, that's when the family started making things really bad for her.
Did she tell you there were threats?
Yes, before she left to go to India, her uncle threatened. He said, if you go to India, I will kill you. And I remember her telling me that quite specifically.
But with money borrowed from friends, she bought a plane ticket and returned to India. And she took along her own sworn statement, this one, to prove to authorities her marriage was genuine and her uncle had lied. In it, she detailed the threats to which she and Mitu had been subjected. It reads in part,
My family does not agree with my marriage and are trying to force me to have it annulled. I fear for the safety of myself and Mitu on a daily basis.
When authorities finally dropped the charges against Mitu in the spring of 2000, he and Jassy were together at last, staying with his mother.
I did kind of feel safe after that. And once Jussie was with me, and it became public knowledge that we were a couple and that we were married, I really did not feel they would do anything. And I believed that if they did something wrong, they would get caught.
So at that point, were you thinking about your marriage, having children, growing old together?
Yeah, we were living together and we were thinking about the future at that point in time. I was very relaxed.
And there were even occasional phone calls to Canada, rekindling the hope that a reconciliation with her family might still be possible. Mitu recalls the last time they spoke to Jassy's mother.
She first berated me for having taken away her daughter and marrying her. She thought that what we had done was wrong. But then she also said, okay, it's fine now that you're married. Everything is okay.
The date was the 8th of June. Jassy and Mitu had come shopping here at this marketplace in a nearby town. When they were finished, they got back on Mitu's motorbike and started towards home.
We were coming back leisurely on the scooter, talking to each other. I really didn't have any suspicion of anything being wrong on the road. Two people suddenly appeared and they attacked us with a hockey stick and a sword.
Where did the sword and the club strike you?
Most of my injuries were on my head. Those were the really bad ones. But they chopped off part of my hand. I have an injury on my neck. There is a big cut on the side of my torso. One of them actually came and felt for my pulse, and he couldn't find it. So he told the others, yeah, he's done for. Let's go. Then they got into the car and sped away. And after that, I lost consciousness. I don't remember anything after that.
By now, Jassy almost certainly believed that Mitu was dead. The attackers had left him lying motionless by the roadside as they forced her into their car, then brought her here to this farmhouse about 40 miles away.
30 minutes later, the beautiful young woman from Canada was dead. Jassy's body was dumped by the road, She'd been beaten and stabbed, her throat slashed. She wouldn't be found until the next morning. It wasn't long before investigators would learn about the attack on Mitu and his missing wife. Soon, the body in the ditch was identified as Jassie's. Her death made headlines back home.
I hoped against hope that that wasn't her.
So you literally found out by picking up the morning newspaper?
Mm-hmm.
What went through your mind that moment?
No, it's not true. No. I didn't want to believe it.
When news of Jassie's murder reached her family in Canada, they told local reporters they couldn't believe it either.
A big, big shock to everyone, and just really tragic.
We're hoping whoever did this to her gets caught.
I did not do anything.
Almost immediately, suspicion fell on the family, though Jassie's uncle Surjit wasted no time accusing Mitu's family of the murder. He charged it was part of an elaborate plan to get control of Jassie's money. Meanwhile, Mitu lay in an Indian hospital, fighting for his life. So who was responsible for Jassie's death? Could the family that so prized her life also have taken it? Could they believe the slaying of a rebellious daughter would somehow restore the honor they thought they had lost? Now, it would be up to one of the Punjab's leading detectives to find the answers.
Coming up next, the investigator will answer those three questions along with the evidence that's been piled up. Could this evidence lead to who was Jassie's killer? Bob McEwen will look into that evidence. Stay with us. Jassie was murdered. Mitu was injured. But there are clues as to what had happened. Now remember, the family denies it. Denies what happened. But could there be evidence that it was the parents that did it? You're about to witness all the evidence that had happened as the detective walks us through all the evidence that was used to kill Jassie. As Bob McEwen continues, it's a love story that turns into a murder.
There are three specific injuries to her chin, her neck, and her chest, which possibly caused her death.
Inspector Sarwan Singh was the lead detective assigned to investigate Jassie's case. One of the senior police officers in the Punjab, he's seen enough murders to make an educated guess about the kind of weapon used in this one.
Three injuries were caused by the traditional Sikh sword, which we refer to as the kirpan.
In Sikh culture, the sword, or kirpan, is usually worn as a religious symbol. Though violence is frowned upon in this faith, the kirpan has historically been the weapon used to defend it and the moral values it stands for. But Inspector Singh needed more than guesswork to solve this case. First, he needed to find a motive.
I discovered that a case had already been filed against Mitu, alleging that Mitu had forced Jassie into a marriage. That's when we discovered their love affair and the secret marriage.
And that's when he also discovered the notarized statement that Jassie submitted as proof her uncle had lied to Indian authorities about her marriage to Mitu. What that gave Inspector Singh was solid evidence that their lives had previously been threatened by her family.
The affidavit that Jassie sent from Canada is actually like a dying declaration under the Indian Evidence Act and is irrefutable.
So the inspector brought the Indian relatives loyal to Jassie's uncle Surjit in for interrogation.
After sustained questioning, one of the relatives gave us the names of the killers and the kidnappers that he had hired, and that's how we got to the others.
Investigators also learned the conspirators had been promised $50,000, a fortune in the Punjab, to kill Mitu and kidnap Jassie. Inspector Singh took us to the property room where weapons and other evidence are stored.
It's like going back 100 years.
Among the items they recovered from the crime scene,
This is a sword which was used to kill Jassie.
a kirpan, the kind of weapon traditionally used to defend Sikh honor. But for Inspector Singh, it was what happened here, inside this farmhouse, on the night of June the 8th, that was the final piece of the puzzle. He says that according to the confessions he extracted, Jassy was dragged up to this room where she was put on a cellular telephone. For 5 years, she'd been caught between two worlds. That night, they collided. Ancient tradition and modern value, family honor and romantic love, and now the sword and the cell phone. At the other end of the line in Canada, according to investigators, was her uncle Surjit.
And he told the girl, look, we have been trying to tell you that you have to leave this boy and you have to come back to Canada. And you have not listened. And now you will bear the consequences.
Then, the inspector says, Jassy spoke to her mother from the family compound. Jassy begged for forgiveness, but it was too late for that. The kidnappers got their final instructions from her uncle.
Surjit Singh finally told the killers on the mobile phone that the girl should be murdered and the body thrown away. Because if she was allowed to stay alive, she would eventually indict the whole lot of them in what they at that point thought was Mitu's murder.
In the end, 13 people were charged with murder. The men accused of attacking Jassy and Mitu, and the family members who conspired to have them do it. Though police say some confessed during questioning, all now claim they're innocent.
Will you tell them we're from American television and we'd like to talk to them about Jassy's murder?
When we visited India this past spring, several of them appeared in court for a hearing.
We'd like to know about the involvement of Jassy's family in Canada, the money and the telephone call on the night of the murder.
But of the 13 accused in the murder, only 11 are in custody. Only 11 are facing a trial. That's because 2 of them remain free in Canada, Jassy's mother and her uncle.
It's sick. I just cannot still believe to this day that even happened. I can't believe that they're walking around like nothing even happened.
In fact, under Canadian law, conspiring to have someone murdered, wherever the killing takes place, is the same as committing the murder. So we went to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to ask why, more than 2 years later, Jassy's uncle and mother have not been arrested in Canada, let alone charged. RCMP spokesman Grant Learned.
That's a crime in Canada. If they conspired here to kill her there, that's a crime here, is it not?
It would be if those facts were proven and established in Canadian law.
But how are you going to prove the facts unless you ask the questions in the first place?
Then, again, the questions that have been asked are being dealt with through the Indian authorities where people are charged. Canadian citizens, I'm told, are charged in relation to the murder of Jas Sidhu in India.
As far as we can tell, the police in Canada have not questioned Jassy's uncle, her mother, or any potential witnesses.
In the past 2 years, since her murder, have the police asked to speak to you?
No one said you're the first person that's actually talked to us in detail about this.
No one's come to you asking what she felt, what she thought, what she feared?
No.
Indeed, if the police had taken the time to question Jassy's closest friends, they would have learned about the threats on her life that, according to Indian authorities, leave little doubt about who is behind her murder.
We were talking about her being with him and what would happen if she did go to be with him and ran away and got married. And she said, well, they'll kill me. My mother and my uncle would kill me. And I said, well, my mom says she's going to kill me all the time too. But, I'm still here. And she said, no, you don't understand. They will kill me.
But despite that, and the evidence in India, Jassy's mother and her uncle Surjit Badesha have not only avoided prosecution in Canada so far, they might never be prosecuted.
Those people are free to go about their business as they choose?
No one has been charged here in Canada.
They're free to leave Canada if they choose?
If they so chose, they could leave and go anywhere, unless there's
which would mean that they would escape both Canadian and Indian justice, potentially.
Again, that's hypothetical, depending on where they would go.
But Jassy's friends in Canada say there's nothing hypothetical about what happened to her.
Mr. Badesha!
And they want to know how it can be that the people they believe responsible continue to go about their lives like nothing ever happened. We wondered too.
I would like to ask Mr. Badesha about the murder of his niece.
Coming up next, the conclusion to this story. Is the uncle or the father ready to admit that he killed her daughter? Are they going to investigate this story? Are they going to investigate this issue? And what about those evidence right there? you're gonna hear what he has to say, and maybe you'll agree on both sides. Stay with us. Before we continue on with Forbidden Love, let's give you an update on the Crumley case. The Crumleys seek lower bond again. We never tried to free. We can prove it. With their trial holding indefinitely, their son, now a convicted killer, the parents of high school children are asking to get him released on a lower bond, arguing they have new evidence supports the release. In the new court filing, lawyers for James Jeffrey Crumley say they have obtained evidence that proves their clients were never on the run after learning they were being charged last year. As prosecutors have long alleged, the Crumleys say they never fled, but left officers stay at friends' Detroit's art studio for their own safety and plan to surrender the following day of their scheduled court hearing. Their son has been jailed for over a year. The explanations for the cash, like the multiple cell phones, all these explanations could happen. So, whatever they say, we'll let you know what happens. As for Uvalde, well, there were 9 suspects in that shooting at the Memorial Park. And just 3 hours ago, the mother of the elementary shooting, the mother of the shooting victim, Lexi Ruber, graduated from St. Mary's University, so congratulations to her. I'm very proud of you. Very proud of you. When we come back, the uncle or the father tells their side or his side of the story about the murder. Is he ready to confess about what happened to Jassy? Remember, all the evidence is piling up. The cell phone calls, the sword, all this. So Bobby Q is going to confront the father. Stay with us. Well, we're not out of time. We're going to continue this. We're going to continue this issue on Monday. Now, did Jassy's uncle kill her daughter? Why were 11 out of 13 people being charged? What will the mother say? And what else would happen when people would investigate this? There is an update about this. I'm going to give you the update as well on Monday. Also coming up on Monday, imagine your child is suffering through epilepsy seizures. Doctors say they may be able to help, but the cure they proposed would be unsuitable. You're going to meet a young girl years ago who had half her brain removed, along with another story. 2 stories about the hemispherectomy. That's on Monday, along with the conclusion to Forbidden Love. That's Give Me a Break for the Saturday going to Sunday. I'll see you again for Give Me a Break Monday. Hope you all had a great day. For all of us, hope you all had a great day, and I hope you have a great night. For all of us here at YouTube and Give Me a Break, good night, everyone.